Hello everybody, welcome to the county seat today. I'm your host Chad Booth. We are going to venture into the area of funding for counties that are mostly federal land. And we are going to look at some of the problems that federal lands cause because they're non-taxable parcels of land and counties rely on property tax to function. There are two major funds called PILT and SRS. Those are our topics today. In case they're phrases you've not heard before, let's get some basics put together on what they are.
Most people seem to think that property tax is the primary funding source for county governments. However, that isn't the case for all counties. Many counties in the West have a budgeting problem that is less dependent on the assessor's rolls than it is on Congress. These counties have large tracts of federal lands within their boundaries, lands that by law can't be taxed, leaving the remaining private landowners to bear the burden of generating the lion's share of property tax revenue. For example, Garfield County has 3.3 million acres within its boundaries. Only 3% of it is in private ownership. So that's only 3% of the land that can be taxed to fund all of the county's services. To which Garfield County Commissioner Jerry Taylor commented, "We got the short end of the stick." The federal government realized that there was an issue and created PILT, or Payment in Lieu of Taxes, back in 1976 to help offset the costs of running the county. But the program is subject to appropriations every year from Congress and has historically been underfunded. The problem for counties is that they are relying on these payments to run the county and have to lobby Congress each year to make sure the program is funded. 62% of counties across the country have federal land within their boundaries, accounting for some 600 million acres nationwide. Utah has 32.9 million acres of PILT entitlement land and received $41 million last year to help fund vital county services. To complicate issues even further, not every county receives the same amount per acre. For example, Washington County receives the full $2.71 per entitlement acre, while Garfield County only receives 35 cents per acre. Rates are governed by a formula that takes into account the total acreage in relation to population, as well as monies paid on mineral leases on federal lands, timber sales, and how much SRS funding a county receives. SRS, or Secure Rural Schools, is another program that helps forest communities compensate for steep reductions in revenues that used to be received from timber harvests. Forest counties receive 25% of the royalties paid from timber sales on federal forests to help cover the cost to maintain roads and provide education to their communities. While the two programs are separate, they are very closely tied together.
I think a lot of people view them as completely separate, but they're not completely separate, because if SRS funding goes away, we're going to have more counties in the Northwest taking bigger chunks of the PILT pie, which means all of us little tiny counties like Paiute are going to take a massive hit.
Paiute County received $267,000 last year in PILT for its 1,500 residents, which is slightly more than what Salt Lake County collected for its 1.1 million residents. In fact, 19 of Utah's counties currently receive more than $1 million from PILT, which could have a huge impact on a county budget. For the county seat, I'm Derek Dowsett.
Well, now you have an update on PILT and SRS, so you know what the terminology is. Now we'll talk about what some of the policy challenges are that affect both of these funding mechanisms. We'll be right back on the county seat.
I promised my son that if he got straight A's, we would take a guys trip, just the two of us. We were riding on a trail outside a place called Minersville, Utah. There was so much to explore and the trail just kept climbing higher, right to the top of a mountain called Jack's Peak. We just stood there with the whole world below us, not saying much. In fact, not a word. Later, my son turned to me and said, "I love you, Dad." Suddenly I realized We weren't just camping, we were connecting.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
Exploring is an innate part of being human. What if there was a place on Earth that explores your sense of touch, sound, breath, sight, all year long? So take your time and make it monumental. San Juan County, Utah's Canyon Country, is the place to explore your sense of adventure.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about PILT, payment in lieu of taxes, and SRS, secure rural school funding today. They're federal funds that help rural counties that have lots of federal land in them cover their cost of operations to secure, protect, and provide health, safety, and welfare for people in those counties. Joining us for the conversation are two of the most federally burdened counties in the state with federal lands. We have Jack Lytle, commissioner from Daggett County up in the northeast corner of the state. And from down in the southwest corner of the state, we've got Leland Pollock from Garfield County, who's the chair of the Garfield County Commission. Gentlemen, thanks for joining. Let's talk a little bit about SRS, and I want to talk about the fact that this was an agreed plan that when they started doing conservation work and started reducing logging from forests and the royalties went away, they said, well, we've got to do something for these communities. That's the genesis of SRS. Why is it so hard to fund it each year?
Let's go back to the real genesis of SRS. It's because the radical environmental groups, all of the SUA, Friends of the Dixie, whatever, got rid of the sawmills. Simple as that. That's why we have SRS. Number one, people need to realize we need those sawmills back. The reason that Congress is burdened with this bill to pay the counties is because they helped through the agencies and litigation, and everybody worked together. It seemed like a perfect storm, and eliminated the sawmills, okay? So what you had was a lot of counties that was relying on the 25% that we were getting from the board footage to run our infrastructure. That came in when the Forest Reserve was enacted in 1906. Okay, we were given 25% to keep us whole. All right, now fast forward to by the time Bill Clinton was done with us with the roadless rule and all of those restrictive federal policies, it was bankrupting the counties. And not just Utah, but Oregon, Washington, California, all over the West. Okay, so Congress knew they had a real problem. So they come up with SRS. Now how that ties to PILT, when they enacted the Secure Rurals Self-Determination Act back then, some of the large counties that were receiving a lot of PILT in a formula gave up some of that money to get more SRS, okay? So through the years, this was like 2001. Okay, here we are, fast forward to 2019, okay? They've reduced the amount of SRS dramatically that we receive, that runs all of our infrastructure basically in these forest counties supposed to on the forest, and helps with the emergency services and everything else, okay? If that goes away, if SRS goes away, then the PILT counties are going to take that money back, and we're going to lose not only SRS, but we're going to lose part of our PILT payment.
And that's going to apply particularly with Oregon, California, Washington, and the fact because they were such high timber producers.
Yes.
And then the efforts that they went through with the environmental issues as well. Once those receipts went to nothing, the backfill was SRS, and they, as Leland said they gave up part of their PILT rather than taking all of their PILT. Now, with any time there's any deviation or anything that looks like it's going to hurt SRS, they have a big chunk of PILT that will be to fill that hole again.
So, you know, I want to kind of follow up on something that you said, because you said it was getting rid of the lumber mills that made the SRS necessary, but wasn't the action really to stop the flow, the outbound flow of timber from the forests, which caused the lumber mills to go away? So it wasn't really like the spotted owl that killed the mills?
It was a little bit of that, but let's get to the John Wayne honest version. I'm in the largest forest county in the state of Utah. Our forests are a disaster now. They're burning. They're a catastrophic mess. We lost our drinking water in Panguitch 2 years straight because the Forest Service would not thin the forest because they were afraid of the environmentalists. They're really not environmentalists, they're eco-terrorists. Look at the catastrophic fires in the West. Where did they come from? They didn't come from global warming. They came from a movement to eliminate sawmills, and the problem was a lot of those sawmills and the Forest Service was working good together, and they were thinning. They were not clear cutting. They were thinning. And our forests back then were beautiful, okay? So that's the whole active management model that we have got to get back to. But that is what created SRS.
So I'm going to ask this a question of both of you, because both of your counties are heavily timbered, and they both have a history of a lot of lumber activity to create revenue. Would you rather have sawmills and receipts from sawmills than SRS, or would you rather have the security of SRS funding?
I'm going to dance on that question a little bit. I'd rather have receipts and people working, no matter what. But the bottom line is, and Leland hit on it really well, we need healthy forests. Healthy forests lead to healthy watersheds. That's our infrastructure, is a watershed. And we've got the north slope of the Uintas, the east side of that, feeding us and Flaming Gorge. We've had active forest management activity in the form of receipts, whether it's up until just before whenever the roadless rule came in. We need both. Now back to the SRS thing. If we can have a sustainable, and back to those basic words, sustained yield, multiple use. If we can function under sustained yield, that's what we want to do with that forest and protect our watershed, which needs attention right now because our watersheds are functional at risk because of the poor health of the forest and the worry of fire.
So we're going to have to take a quick break here. And
but I will take the sawmills back.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
all right, that's good.
Did I say I wouldn't? No, we will take the sawmills back.
No, he didn't say he wouldn't, but I'm 100%.
100% that you'd rather, if it was an either or.
We had some, in his defense, we had some big sawmills in Garfield County.
No, and our sawmills, we had one, but we supplied the stuff in Mountain View and Evanston.
Right.
And in Vernal. Vernal, actually 3 sawmills that don't exist. So, no, the sawmills, they're a big part of us.
All right, so
that went away.
We've kind of touched on the problems of SRS. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive into PILT, which is a much more broadly applied reimbursement for from the federal government for the lands that they have in counties. Stay with us.
If you're looking for gold at the end of the rainbow, you'll probably be disappointed, because in Paiute County, the only thing you'll find at the end of a rainy day is the promise of adventure. Highway 89 is your access point through Marysville and the historic trails of Bouillon Canyon. Find yourself in the mountains one minute and the desert the next as you follow in the footsteps of the pioneers. Whitewater raft, fish, hike, all within a few minutes of a comfortable bed and a warm meal. Find out why the world has made Paiute County its off-road destination. Paiute County, the place where the rainbow ends.
Mountains to explore. Adventure to be had. A town to fall in love with. Yes, all that in Park City, Utah. Start your adventure at visitparkcity.com.
Make your next adventure at Bear Lake. The Bear Lake Valley has something for everyone, all year long. Scenery, skies, water, or wildlife. You'll find what you're looking for at Bear Lake. Bear Lake, where families play year-round.
Welcome back to County Seat. We are having a conversation today with a couple of commissioners about federal funding or reimbursement for federal lands, part of it off the timber sales, SRS. We're now going to pay attention to PILT, which stands for Payment in Lieu of Taxes. How did PILT get started?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah.
And we're talking federal.
Federal land, there is no money in it for county government. I mean, you cannot tax it. In Garfield County alone, it's 33 cents an acre. 93% of that county is federal land. Mm-hmm. So it's basically pennies in lieu of taxes. It really is almost like welfare for these counties, where we should be able to utilize our natural resources or be able to tax. We can't.
So do both of you resent the statement people make that they call you welfare counties because you get PILT?
I don't resent it. I'm very frustrated with the fact that when you go to any state west of the Rockies, those counties are supported by private land taxing. And it's the flip-flop. There's maybe 10% public land. Mm-hmm. Go to Daggett County, Garfield County, most of the counties in the state, we're at 89% federal. When you have that much land and no way to really make it work for itself and support the county's infrastructure, how else? Well, I don't know that there's an alternative to PILT, so I don't know that that's. I have a very hard time with calling it.
And that's a good point, Commissioner, because you cannot control your destiny.
Yes.
And if you have, like he has, I think you said 30,000 people show up on a weekend in this little county with what, 300 or 400 people?
Well, we've got right in the between 900 and 1,000.
1,000
pay
people.
The bill.
And then how do you take care of these folks when they come in, and how do you pay for that?
So if you have 30,000 people come in every winter or every weekend through the summer season, does that? I mean, that's 30,000 trips at least, 60,000. Trips or something like that on your roads. Do your roads suffer from it?
Our roads suffer from it. Our EMS suffers because of the increased calls, and we're dying on the vine with EMS right now. We're struggling. And there's other ways that we get. I don't want anyone to think there aren't other ways to help get that funded. Mm-hmm. But the fact is that impact of those people, and we're welcoming the people there. There's no doubt about that. But the fact is, there's the dump, the waste collection, mm-hmm. all of the things that come with that many people starts to become onerous if there's not something that helps in the infrastructure side of it.
So I want to talk about PILT, because basically for those of us who have a basic understanding of PILT is, instead of getting property tax for each of these acres of federal land, you get a stipend instead, and the Congress determines what that stipend should be, and then they figure how much of that they're going to pay each year. But is that a straight per acreage formula? If you've got 10,000 acres in your county of federal land, you're going to get 10,000 acres?
Herein lies the problem, okay? The way they set the formula up was heavily favoring the high population counties with a lot of federal land, because it's population. If you've got a lot of people in your county and you've got a lot of federal land, you get a lot of money. But yet, like, let me go back to what he said, 30,000 people. Now with Highway 89 and the parks and everything, 5 to 6 million people come through Garfield County. every year. I mean, for at least 6 months, and we have to take care of them. EMS, that's a good point. Sheriff services, all of these services, roads, we have to take care of them. And 33 cents an acre to do all that, you have to be a very conservative county and be like a business person to make it.
Let's put this in perspective. If you owned an acre worth of land, you had an acre home lot in Panguitch, what would you be paying per acre for that?
Well, I can tell you this.
That's a good point.
Farm ground in that Panguitch Valley, and it is much more in northern Utah, is $10,000 an acre now, if it has a little bit of water on it. And I mean, do the math on that. 93. Garfield County is the size of the state of Connecticut. Now, here's one more point I want to hit on, because we get criticized all the time from these special interest groups that are mad at us for our land use policies, like we supported downsizing the Grand Staircase. But yet, Garfield County is a very conservative county. We have no debt. We have a zero debt model in our county. Why? Because 87% of our property tax goes to the school district to function so the schools can function. Okay, if we had to take the little bit of property tax that we get in Garfield County, we could run that county about 20 days in the summer.
Wow.
That's a fact. I mean, and so what we have to do is we have to rely on things like PILT, SRS, intergovernmental revenue, sales tax, all of those things.
TRT.
And then we have to be very conservative, and this is why we cannot bond in Garfield County. We don't have debt because we don't know, we can't control our destiny. We don't know where the checks are going to come from next.
Any last comments on PILT from either of you?
Go ahead, I've talked.
No, you're good. No, the thing with PILT right now is, one of the things is they're looking at, and there's a bill that's been dropped in the Senate, I believe right now, where they're looking at trying to help, especially with the small population, large acreage, but small population counties, an extra multiplier, especially if you're at different gradations. So for us, we fall under 1,000. And that it won't make a big change because our number is not a huge number that we get in PILT, but it will be a difference. And to get that conversation going in Congress has been tremendous. And so with the support of NACO, the Public Land Steering Committee, the gentleman that is the chair of ours, Todd Devlin from Montana, has been a hero of the. He's the chair of the.
I mean, it seems almost counterintuitive, just in summary, that the formula favors high population areas that are going to have higher property tax values, more people to generate revenue, and even though they've got more federal land, they should be more able to sustain themselves through that process. And so it's like the guy that really needs it isn't getting it.
Well, it's before the freeways, and I think PILT put the years in there, but people are a lot more mobile. They travel, they go to different places. The home counties, they don't spend their weekend in the Wasatch Front, many of them.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes. We've got to take a commercial break, so we're going to slip away from here and come back for a summary on our conversation on PILT and SRS. We'll be right back.
Make your next adventure at Bear Lake. The Bear Lake Valley has something for everyone, all year long. Scenery, skies, water, or wildlife. You'll find what you're looking for at Bear Lake. Bear Lake, where families play year-round.
All the traveling that I've done over the world, I'd still rate this locale as being one of the best.
This is some of the most scenic country out there. And part of the appeal for Kanab is it's a small town. It's beautiful. People are very friendly.
It's just been awe-inspiring.
You just couldn't find a nicer place to come.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about SRS and PILT today, and by now, hopefully you have got those terms down real well. You know, we talked in the last segment about the fact that we have fixed the formula somewhat for PILT. What else needs to happen, or what should have happened to solve the problem? Because it's obviously still a problem.
Well, I'll respectfully disagree with the fix. It's a tweak because we've gotten their attention a little bit. But the big issue is getting closer to having value for value for what that tax or that thing is, especially when we look at the federal government's participation in our counties. And you can speak to that as well as anyone, Leland, on that value for value issue.
So your issue is that the federal government is freeloading on private citizens because they're not paying their fair share of property values?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, look at the acreage. I told you, Garfield County is the size of the state of Connecticut. 93% of it's federal land. So basically, to get the amount that we get every year, yes, that's not even near what we need to run that county. Now, here's the problem. When you say fix, it was not fixed at all. Okay, the high acreage counties like the Garfields that are the size of Connecticut that get the least amount of PILT, like Daggett, just because we have a low population of 4,900 people, but yet we're this large federal landmass. That's not right, and it doesn't work at all. The reason it doesn't work at all is, I'll give you one example, a big example, tourism. Look at the tourism that comes into Garfield County. So it's lopsided, and
and tourism tax dollars aren't allowed to be applied to infrastructure.
Right.
Okay. One sentence wrap up. What do we need? What's the best solution?
I would say the only thing, get back to more of states' rights, better management, but as far as fixing PILT, you're going to have to take away from those high population counties and make it a more fair and equitable, valuable program for all PILT counties.
Okay, very good. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking your time. Thank you for joining us. Remember, local government is where your life happens. These issues are real, and whether you live on the Wasatch Front or the far ends of Daggett County, where they only have 800 citizens, these issues affect all of us as Utahns. So we'll look for you next week on the County Seat.